Under the AWS shared responsibility model, which task belongs to the customer? Correct answer, configuring firewalls and networks. Explanation, customers are responsible for securing their workloads, which includes configuring firewalls, network settings, IAM, and data protection. Why others are incorrect? Patching RDS-OS, AWS manages the underlying OS for managed services like RDS. Physical/environmental controls, AWS owns data center infrastructure security. Security of AWS Cloud, AWS secures the cloud, customers secure their use in the cloud. Which AWS service establishes a dedicated private network connection between on-premises and AWS? Correct answer, AWS Direct Connect. Explanation. AWS Direct Connect provides a high bandwidth, low latency dedicated connection between your data center and AWS. Why others are incorrect? Snowball, for data transfer appliances, not live connections. Shield, for DDoS protection. Storage Gateway, for hybrid storage access, not networking. In case of an environmental disaster, which AWS architectural components should a company replicate for fault tolerance? Correct answer, availability zones. Explanation. Workloads should be deployed across multiple AZs within a region to achieve high availability and fault tolerance. Why others are incorrect? Edge locations, for caching, not workload replication. Route 53, provides DNS routing, not workload replication. Regions, used for global DR, but within a region AZ replication is the core practice for continuity. Which two tasks are customer responsibilities under the AWS shared responsibility model? Correct answers, data integrity, authentication and security of data in transit. Explanation. Customers manage their data's integrity, confidentiality, and security, including encryption in transit and at rest. Why others are incorrect? Storage device decommissioning, AWS's responsibility. Data center security, AWS manages physical security. Physical firewalls, AWS owns and manages infrastructure firewalls. Which AWS service analyzes access policies and recommends improvements for security and functionality? Correct answer, AWS IAM Access Analyzer. Explanation. IAM Access Analyzer validates IAM policies to ensure they are secure and functional, preventing overly permissive access. Why others are incorrect? Guard Duty, detects threats, not policy misconfigurations. Trusted Advisor, provides best practice checks but not detailed IAM policy analysis. Systems Manager, for automation and management, not IAM policy review. Which AWS service uses ML to find and protect sensitive data in Amazon S3 buckets? Correct answer, Amazon Macie. Explanation. Amazon Macie discovers and protects sensitive data, example PII, stored in Amazon S3 using ML. Why others are incorrect? Shield, protects from DDoS attacks. Cognito, manages identity/authentication, not data discovery. Network firewall, protects traffic, not S3 data. Designing systems to withstand failure of one or more components demonstrates which AWS feature. Correct answer, high availability. Explanation. High availability ensures systems remain operational despite component failures, often achieved through redundancy. Why others are incorrect? Scalability, handles growth in demand. Elasticity, expands or contracts automatically. Agility, refers to speed of innovation, not fault tolerance. Which AWS support plan includes a technical account manager, TAM, and 24/7 concierge level support? Correct answer, AWS Enterprise Support. Explanation. Enterprise support provides TAMs, concierge service, and 24/7 access to senior technical support. Why others are incorrect? Business support, 24/7 support but no TAM or concierge. Developer support, business hour guidance only. Basic support, free, limited to billing and documentation. A company needs to run a non-interruptible workload on EC2 for 3 years. Which pricing model is most cost-effective? Correct answer, reserved instances. Explanation. Reserved instances provide significant discounts for predictable, long-term workloads compared to on-demand. Why others are incorrect? Dedicated hosts, needed for compliance, not cost optimization. On-demand, too expensive for long-term steady usage. Spot, cheapest but unsuitable for non-interruptible workloads. Which AWS feature is best for limiting inbound traffic directly to an RDS instance? Correct answer, security groups. Explanation. Security groups act as stateful firewalls controlling traffic to and from AWS resources like RDS. Why others are incorrect? Guard duty, monitors for threats, doesn't block traffic. WAF, protects web applications, not RDS. NACLs, stateless and applied at subnet level, less granular than SGS. Which AWS service helps developers trace and troubleshoot requests across distributed applications by providing end-to-end performance insights? Correct answer, AWS X-Ray. Explanation. AWS X-Ray allows developers to analyze and debug production, distributed applications by providing request tracing and visualizing service maps, making it easier to identify bottlenecks or errors. Why others are incorrect? AWS Cloud9, Cloud IDE, not for tracing. AWS CodeStar, used for CI/CD setup and project management. AWS Cloud Map, for service discovery, not troubleshooting. A new web application requires users to log in using external identity providers like Google or Facebook. Which AWS service provides this feature? Correct answer, Amazon Cognito. Explanation. Amazon Cognito allows users sign in with social identity providers, Google, Facebook, Apple, etc., and enterprise SAML providers. Why others are incorrect? AWS IAM, for managing AWS accounts and permissions, not app logins. AWS Single Sign-On, centralized access to AWS accounts, not app-level social login. AWS Directory Service, for integrating with Microsoft Active Directory, not social login. Which areas can AWS Trusted Advisor evaluate and provide recommendations for? Correct answers, cost optimization and security best practices. Explanation. AWS Trusted Advisor checks for cost optimization, security best practices, service limits, performance, and fault tolerance. Why others are incorrect? Compliance status, not directly checked. Network utilization, not analyzed. Application performance, not directly monitored. Which AWS action requires the use of the root user account? Correct answer, changing the AWS support plan. Explanation. Only the root user can upgrade or downgrade an AWS support plan. Why others are incorrect? Viewing billing info, possible with proper IAM permissions. Support cases, can be opened by IAM users with access. EC2 actions, managed with IAM permissions, not root only. Which AWS tool allows users to request and track service limit increases centrally? Correct answer, service quotas. Explanation. Service quotas lets you monitor and request quota increases for AWS resources. Why others are incorrect? AWS config, for compliance/resource tracking. AWS budgets, for managing cost. AWS service catalog, for managing pre-approved resources. Which AWS features help provide disaster recovery options for EC2 instances? Correct answers, EBS snapshots and AMOS. Explanation. AMOS and EBS snapshots enable backup and disaster recovery of EC2 instances. Why others are incorrect? Reserved instances, for cost savings, not recovery. Guard duty, threat detection. AWS Shield, DDoS protection, not recovery. A company needs to run short-duration workloads triggered by events, minimizing cost and management overhead. Which service should they choose? Correct answer, AWS Lambda. Explanation. AWS Lambda is serverless, runs code in response to events, and only charges per execution, making it cost-efficient for short workloads. Why others are incorrect? On-demand EC2, more expensive for short tasks. Spot instances, cheap but not reliable for critical workloads. Reserved instances, suited for long-running workloads. Which AWS resources should be included in an OS patch management routine document? Correct answers, EC2 instances, RDS instances, and ECS instances. Explanation. Customers are responsible for patching OS on EC2, RDS, and ECS instances. AWS manages OS patching for Lambda and Fargate. Why others are incorrect? Fargate tasks, fully managed. Lambda functions, managed by AWS. Which AWS service offers DNS routing, domain registration, and health checks? Correct answer, Amazon Route 53. Explanation. Route 53 is AWS's managed DNS service that provides domain registration, routing, and health checks. Why others are incorrect? CloudFront, content delivery, not DNS. Direct Connect, private network link. API gateway, for managing APIs. An application running on EC2 instances is experiencing latency due to CPU hitting 100% during peak hours. Which AWS feature should be used to handle high demand? Correct answer, auto-scaling group. Explanation. Auto-scaling automatically adds/removes instances based on demand, ensuring scalability and performance. Why others are incorrect? Route 53, DNS service, not scaling. Elastic IP, static IP, no scaling. Global accelerator, improves global performance but doesn't scale compute. Which AWS service provides SSL/TLS certificates to secure applications with HTTPS? Correct answer, AWS Certificate Manager. Explanation. AWS Certificate Manager, ACM, provides and manages SSL/TLS certificates. Why others are incorrect? WAF, protects from web attacks. Shield, DDoS protection. VPC, networking service, not certificates. A company is migrating its on-premises PostgreSQL database to AWS. They don't want to change queries but want maximum performance. Which service should they choose? Correct answer, Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL. Explanation. Aurora PostgreSQL is fully compatible with PostgreSQL but offers superior performance and scalability. Why others are incorrect? RDS for PostgreSQL, works but slower than Aurora. DynamoDB, no SQL support. DocumentDB, for MongoDB workloads, not PostgreSQL. A company needs hourly AWS cost breakdown reports delivered to S3. Which service should be used? Correct answer, AWS Cost and Usage Reports. Explanation. Cost and Usage Reports, CUR, provide detailed billing data with hourly granularity, exportable to S3. Why others are incorrect? Budgets, for setting alerts, not detailed reporting. Pricing Calculator, for cost estimation, not reporting. Cost Explorer, for analyzing but not exporting detailed reports. Which managed AWS service simplifies the creation and maintenance of custom EC2 images? Correct answer, EC2 Image Builder. Explanation. EC2 Image Builder automates creation, testing, and deployment of custom AMIS. Why others are incorrect? AMI, just the image itself, not a service. Elastic Beanstalk, app deployment, not image building. Launch Wizard, helps deploy applications, not build AMIS. A company wants to provide its employees access only to a predefined set of AWS resources. Which service should be used? Correct answer, AWS Service Catalog. Explanation. AWS Service Catalog allows organizations to create and manage approved collections of resources, portfolios. Why others are incorrect? Config, compliance monitoring, not access limitation. AppSync, GraphQL service. SDKs, for developers, not access control.